Welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the heavy weapons in Fallout New Vegas. There is only 5 of the heavy weapons in New Vegas, at least that fire standard bullets. This won't be counting things like explosive weapons similar to the Fat Man or the missile launcher, and it won't be counting any energy weapons. Those are going to be saved for their own videos. These ones were in their own category on the wiki, so I'm going to be treating them as their own category. So let's hop right into the very first one. The very first one is the minigun. The minigun requires 100 guns and 10 strength to wield, making it the maxed out amount of stats that you actually need to wield this weapon effectively. It has low damage per shot because it shoots the 5mm round, although the 5mm round does have an 8 armor breaking on it, and the armor piercing rounds are actually really good for them because they have 25 damage threshold that they just ignore, which is really good. It also has really high DPS because it has a really high rate of fire, holds a lot of shots. Its crit damage and crit multiplier is pretty bad. You're probably not going to be hitting crits with the minigun all that often, and even if you do, they're not going to be doing that much more. Action point cost is okay with this. Its spread is pretty noticeable. It's not one of the most accurate weapons, and it does have a spin-up time, so you do have to wait for it to actually get started to start firing. This does have 2 modifications that you can put on it. You've got the high-speed motor to increase its rate of fire even further. This gives it 25% more rate of fire. That's pretty nice. And you also have the dampener, which reduces its spread by actually a decent amount. That is pretty noticeable when you throw both those onto the minigun. The base minigun's fine. The upgraded minigun is also fine. I've never really found myself using the minigun all that much unless I just have an excess of 5mm rounds and I just want to run around and spray this. It works really well against unarmored enemies, and it can work fairly well against up to medium armored enemies. Really heavily armored enemies, the minigun doesn't really do much to them, even with the armor piercing rounds, so that can be a little bit of a pain. These things do weigh a lot. All of these weapons weigh a lot that we're going to be talking about. This one weighs 25. Minigun, I think I'm just going to put it into B tier. I think it's a solid all-around weapon. I think it's fine for just clearing up smaller things. I think it's fine if you have a bunch of extra 5mm rounds, but I don't know of a whole lot of people that take it as their primary weapon. Tell me if you do in the comments, though. I'd be interested to hear. And then we have the unique minigun. This is the CZ57 Avenger. This one you can find at the northmost part of the map, actually the northeastmost part of the map, basically. You have to find it in a giant hole with centaurs around it. There's also ghouls and super mutants around the area, so it is a little bit dangerous. This one also requires 100 guns and 10 strength, so it requires a lot. It does slightly more damage than a minigun. It has a high rate of fire like the minigun. It has a worse crit modifier on it for some reason than the other minigun. Its crit damage is still not that great. Action point cost is better, so it's not too bad. And it does have about half the total spread of the regular minigun, making it quite a bit better. It also has half the ammo capacity, though, for some reason, only holding 120 instead of the 240 that the minigun has. This one is also lighter, weighing 18, so it's actually not too bad to carry around. And if you have like heavyweight, then it drops it to 9. That's pretty manageable. This one isn't really a bad gun either. I don't really have any problems with it. I think it's pretty good all the way around. So I would say it's A tier. Then we move on to the Old World Blues guns, where we have the K9000 Cyberdog gun. This is a weapon that you can get 2 of in Old World Blues. You can get one from killing one of the trauma harnesses, and you can get one from passing a speech check. This one shoots the 357 round, which is very interesting. It requires 75 guns and 8 strength to wield, so a lot of guns and a lot of strength to wield this one effectively as well. It does pretty decent damage per shot, since it is shooting the 357. Has pretty good DPS, not quite as high as the minigun, but pretty comparable. Really bad crit damage, just like the minigun. It actually has quite a bit of spread, more than the minigun, which is somewhat surprising, because this does technically have a scope on it that you can look through. It's a little bit of an odd scope to look through, but you can use it. Holds 50 rounds in it, and this does have 2 modifications on it, I believe. You can get the Mentat Shell, which increases its rate of fire by 40%, and you can also get the Resto Royal, which gives it 2 more damage. That's pretty good. You find a lot of 357 rounds just sitting around in Old World Blues. It's pretty good in that DLC. You're still going to run into the issue of weight. This thing weighs a lot. It weighs 27, so it is not a light weapon by any means. And honestly, I really wouldn't use this over some of the other 357 weapons. I wouldn't use it over Lucky or the Cowboy Repeater. I think I would probably use those over this with it, but if you have an excess of 357 rounds, this one is not a bad option, and it does okay overall. I'm going to put this one into B tier. I think below the minigun, but still fine. We have the unique version of it next, which is Fido, and you have to change one of the K9000 guns into Fido, or you could change both of them into Fido, I guess, if you wanted. You do need a schematic to do this, but all you need is the actual gun and a workbench. Then you can switch it over. This is a 44 Magnum machine gun, which is also a little bit weird. It's a nice round to be using from it, though, so that is a bonus. This one does more damage. It also requires more guns. Weirdly enough, this requires 85 guns, which I don't think any other weapon has a number like that. Most are 25, 50, 75, and 100. 85 guns seems a little bit weird, requires 9 strength, so even more than the cyber gun does. Does higher damage, higher DPS, slightly better crits, but it's still pretty bad. It actually even has worse spread than the regular gun here. It does change your sight a little bit, as well as it changes the gun, because it's no longer blue, it's now red. It has a bulldog on the side of it, and you have a red scope that you look through. That's all personal preference as to which one of these you'd like. I guess if you have a color blindness towards one, you'd probably prefer the other. Still holds 50 rounds, still weighs a lot. This one I would also say is about the same as the K9000 gun. Maybe higher, maybe lower. It really depends on how many 357 rounds compared to 44 rounds you have. The hand loader perk works really well with both of these because you can make jacketed flat points for the 357, which have armor breaking, bonus damage, and more accuracy. Or you could put the semi-wad cutters into the Fido, which gives you also armor breaking and more damage. And neither of those rounds have a downside, so they're actually really good for these guns. And then for our final gun, we have the shoulder-mounted machine gun. This is found in the Divide. There's only a couple of these, and apparently you can only fix these with other shoulder-mounted machine guns. There's no other weapon that counts in the same category, even if you have jury rigging. So you will need that, or you will need to make some weapon repair kits to fix it. This gun also requires a lot of strength in guns. 75 guns, 7 strength, not quite as much as the other ones that we've talked about, or I guess it's the same as the K9000. This one does decent damage per shot, decent damage per second. It's actually about on par with the rest of these. It's just for some reason this one feels slower to me, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. Maybe it's a bug, or maybe it's just that the sound effects don't line up with it or something. This shoots the 10mm round, which is very odd. Apparently this one has no crit modifier, but still has crit damage, so I guess you can sneak crit with it, but you can't crit normally. Spread is not that great. It weighs a decent amount at 17. I guess not as much as these other ones, but it still is pretty hefty. And you can get 3 modifications for this, all of which costing a lot for this weapon. For some reason, the Divide has its prices way jacked up compared to everywhere else. So you can have better mechanical parts, which gives you better condition for it, so it has more weapon health. That's pretty nice. You can have the recoil compensator, so it reduces its spread, and then its spread is actually okay. It's still not one of the best just in the game, but it's not bad. And then you also get the capacity increase, raising its maximum ammo from 60 to 75. All of those are perfectly fine for this weapon, and it's kind of just an okay weapon. 10mm is fine enough for a bullet, but it's not one of the greatest bullets, because usually you're just firing either regular 10mm or hollow points, or the jacketed hollow points if you have hand loader. That does okay damage, especially toward non-armored targets or lightly armored targets. Against any armored targets, this one just doesn't really do a whole lot for you. I don't know, this one has never really felt amazing to me, so I think I'm actually going to put this one into C tier. I think this is the weakest out of the heavy weapons here. We only have 5 of them again, so there isn't a whole lot to go through here. I think the CZ75 is the best. It has the least spread. It fires the 5mm, which is nice. These other weapons, basically all these weapons, I just kind of use if I have excess rounds for them, because the requirements are really high, they're very weighty, and if I wanted something like this that has a lot of weight to it, I might just take something like the 50 cal, or I might take something like a missile launcher. What are your guys' thoughts on the heavy weapons in Fallout New Vegas, and where would you rank them? I'm curious to hear. Thanks everybody for watching this, I really do appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye everybody!